Technology is absolutely amazing, of course, until it's not, right? And sometimes we feel like we practice and we practice, we work on things, we show up, and things just stop working. It's incredibly frustrating. And the problem is, ultimately, I believe we're at our lowest level of intelligence when we're on stage. I call it stage brain. And what I mean by that is something goes wrong, and we suddenly start to panic, and we try to figure out how to solve it. What I want to do over the next few videos is one, today, introduce you to 4 troubleshooting tips and steps that you can apply no matter what type of gear you have. And then in our next video, I'm going to actually apply that for you and then wrap up with a few extra kind of general troubleshooting tips that you can apply. But today we're going to talk about 4 troubleshooting tips and steps that you can apply whether you're using iConnectivity gear or not. Okay, let's buckle up. Let's dive in. Very first thing, this is going to sound weird, but as soon as you experience a problem on stage, you can't figure something out, before you start troubleshooting, I want you to stop and take a deep breath, right? You're going to think, I need to solve this really quickly. It's important for me to solve this. Before you go to solving it, take a deep breath. And if you're kind of amped up and feel like you're struggling to focus, you've got stage brain, step away for a moment and take 3 deep breaths. Try to slow your heart rate to calm down. I can promise you, taking 10 seconds now will save you 10 minutes later. You will solve your problem much faster if you take a break. Just calm down, take a deep breath, and move on. Number 2 is you want to start by checking the basics. And this sounds really silly, but is it plugged in? Is it powered on? I want to make sure I've joked for years about making sure it's just simply say it's always the cable. The amount of times I have said, oh, my guitar's not working, I can't hear it, my amp is busted, my pedals, blah, blah, blah. And I look down and my cable for my guitar is laying on the ground. I had a friend one time that taught me the phrase high impedance air gap. Use that next time you don't hear your guitar. Tell the sound engineer, sorry, it was a high impedance air gap. They'll get a good chuckle and everyone else in the band will be like, impede, what is he? Don't worry about it. So number 1, take a deep breath, calm down, step away. 10 seconds now will save you 10 minutes later, I promise you. Number 2, check the basics. Is it plugged in? Is it powered on? Reseat cables, that's going to be huge. Number 3, define what the problem actually is. I believe my friends in the corporate IT world call it root cause analysis. I don't have a real job, so I'm not sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the idea of getting really clear on what the problem is. Here's an example. I can't hear my playback rig. Okay, that's not incredibly helpful, because is it that your in-ears aren't properly plugged into your pack? Is it that you can't actually hear anything in your in-ears? Is it that you can hear your click, but you can't hear your playback tracks? Is it that you can hear your playback tracks, but you can't hear your keys? Is it that you can hear playback tracks when you press spacebar, but when you press a button on your MIDI controller, it's not playing in Ableton? Let's get really, really clear on the problem. And you can see, if we don't take that deep breath and just kind of chill out for a moment, and we're experiencing stage brain, you can see how you can get really lost in the details. I can't hear my playback rig turns into Ableton's not recognizing my interface, or Ableton's not seeing my MIDI controller, or, interesting, I can hear my click track, but not the rest of my tracks. And then we can backtrack to the basics and go, oh, I don't have the cables plugged in for playback again. It's always the basics. But number 1, pause, take a few deep breaths. 10 seconds now saves you 10 minutes later. Number 2, check the basics. Is it plugged in? Is it powered on? Reseat cables. Number 3, get really clear on what the problem is. And then number 4, figure out where the problem is occurring. And the way you want to do this is think about signal flow. If you've ever been in a studio before and you've plugged in a microphone, you've gone through some preamps into a DAW. If you've ever stood on stage and plugged your guitar in and plugged it into some pedals and then plugged your pedals into a guitar amp, that's signal flow. It's inputs and outputs. It's sending and receiving. When you think about this, I want you to visualize your signal flow. Again, if it's a complex scenario, grab a Sharpie, grab a piece of paper, and actually draw this out. Or if you want to be prepared, have this drawn out beforehand. Know every element of your signal flow, and then pick one direction and work in that same direction, okay? The mistake I see people make often is they start pulling cables. They pull the input cable, the output cable. They switch the output cable and they switch the input cable, and suddenly it works. We haven't really solved a problem. We just have kind of mitigated the problem, but we haven't realized what the problem was in the first place. So we want to figure out where that problem is occurring. And you do that by visualizing your signal flow, everything that's in line, and then you pick one direction and work towards it, right? Ableton's not seeing my audio interface, okay? Start with your audio interface, start with your cables, trace the cable up. Oh, it's plugged into a hub. that it shouldn't be, but it's plugged into a hub and that's disconnect from my computer. Oh, duh, of course, I found it. Or you trace that, oh, I didn't select it in Ableton, right? You can see clarifying that problem and then trying to figure out where in the chain the problem is really helpful. Now you're going to see next week, like I promised, I'm going to practically apply this with some iConnectivity gear, and you'll see this in real life. But one of my favorite features of the Mio XM, the Mio XL, the Play Audio One U is the visual feedback that I get on the interface itself to see is it sending or receiving. And so if I'm not seeing my MIDI controller at Ableton, I'm teasing this a little bit, I can look and go, oh, well, my Mio XM on stage is receiving it. My Play Audio One U, my playback rig is receiving it, but Ableton's not seeing it. So something from my Play Audio One U to Ableton, I discovered where the problem is. So join me for our next video because we're going to practically apply this to some iConnectivity gear. Then we'll wrap up that video with some really more practical tips and tricks to help you learn how to troubleshoot. If you need some help troubleshooting your gear and you're not on stage and you don't have stage brain, you have some time, reach out to the team at iConnectivity. You can check out the knowledge base for some incredible articles to help solve your problems instantly. And if that doesn't help, you can reach out and contact the team. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you on the next one. Again, stay tuned because you're going to see all this applied next week with some iConnectivity gear. See you on the next one. Bye, everybody.